So greetings. So I'm putting out this simple communication that's uh, objective, right? Again, as I've mentioned, this channel is not an entertainment channel. I'm sharing this information for those who choose to make it a priority to educate themselves and any young people that may be around you. So, here are some important things to consider. For many folks that think it is impossible to be mind controlled, keep in mind that folks with an agenda, manipulators, like to control the context of words and change the context of words. But these are some mind control warning signs. So I invite you to take your time to use your critical thinking before you make quick snap judgments. Take the time to educate yourself. So there are as many as 5,000. This may even be conservative. Religious groups in America praying on the weak and vulnerable. Um, there with have about 5 to 7 million victims and 180,000 new recruits every year. Okay, so tools of mind control, control of the environment. Loved ones are cut off from family with no communication. Uh, there's a breakdown of a sense of self. That's number two. So there's a breakdown of the person's sense of self-esteem, and there's literally they are attacked. They're attacked as individuals on the basis that they are wrong and that the group is right. Right. So you don't have a sense of self that is undermined, and that was the literal one of the biggest techniques of this particular cult leader is that your sense of self, even the word self is even considered like a curse word when you say the word self. But do understand that self can have different contexts. But your sense of self is broken down. You're attacked if you think as an individual on the basis that the individual is wrong and the group is right. Number three, a new sense of identity is instilled, right? And the new identity will be enforced by the group environment, right? So you get no feedback from the other members who tell you that they understand the right behavior and the right way of being. Number four, very important sign, is isolation, the cutoff from the outside world. Fear keeps cult members trapped inside of the environment of the group, right? So those are four things. These are the tools of mind control. Control of the environment, breakdown of the sense of self, instilling a new sense of identity, and isolation, cutting off from the outside world. Okay, here are the warning signs of a potentially harmful group or cult leader. So, harmful cult leader is going to be totalitarian. So, absolute authoritarianism or absolute authority without meaningful accountability. So, the cult leader is what they say goes, right? And there's absolute authority, right? And there's no accountability for the cult leader. There's zero accountability. Number two, little tolerance. There's no place for questions or critical inquiry. And, this is really makes it really brings up something because this was 110% on, which is why I encourage people to educate themselves, right? So there's little tolerance. There's no place for your questions or your critical inquiry. A cult leader will tell you to think, but the way that you are taught to think is controlled. So while they're telling you you're free to think whatever you want, there's little tolerance for your critical thinking. For example, if you have an opinion, they're constantly going to guide your words and tell you what it is that you're thinking and what it is that you mean. Number three, right? These are the warning signs of a potentially harmful cult or group leader. There are unreasonable fears. So there's unreasonable fear about the outside world, such as an impending catastrophe, evil conspiracies, and persecutions, right? So what happens with most religions is particularly cult leaders, right, who are competing with the traditional religions, but quite often that's also at the basis of their ideology, is that you're constantly thinking about the chemtrails, the wars, all these things are exacerbated to become paralyzed by fear. This stuff happening in the world all the time, but it becomes the distinction is it becomes unreasonable fear, right? With the goal of paralyzing the cult members and making them feel they cannot survive without the group and outside of the group. So that's number 3. Number 4, never good enough. The followers feel that they can never be good enough. Right, you can never ascribe or reach up to the standards set by the group. Right. Number 5, no reason to leave. Former followers are always wrong in leaving, negative or even evil. Right. So those are the warning signs of a potentially harmful group or cult leader. 1, it's totalitarian, absolute authoritarianism with no accountability. 2, there's little tolerance for and no place for questions or critical inquiry. Number 3, unreasonable fear. So there's unreasonable fear about the outside world until it paralyzes you and you're so scared of catastrophes. Number 4, never good enough. The followers feel they can never be good enough. And number 5, there's no reason for you to leave the cult. Okay. Now this is really, really important. Some things to look for. People who are vulnerable to mind control, right? Recently divorced. 2, people who are ill or sick. 3, people who have experienced personal tragedy. 4, people who have experienced career failure. And number 5, people who are away from home for the first time. Right. So I really want to make this objective and simple. So it's not coming from my opinion or even just my personal experience. 5 things to look for in terms of people who are vulnerable to mind control. Recently divorced, illness, personal tragedy, career failure, or folks who are away from home for the first time. So as you start to see these bullet points, they are 110% accurate, whether you're looking at this older cult leader, Joseph Robinson, or any of the other ones that have popped up, because as I stated the numbers before, there are many. Okay, so now I'm just gonna go over the warning signs of a quote unquote brainwash victims. Side note, when the cult member is addressed, or even when the members of the cult are told that they've been brainwashed, they go back to the cult leader and they say, somebody's saying I'm brainwashed, and it gets flipped again. Well, of course I'm washing your brain. Your brain needs to be washed. So then when they go back to the people that question them being brainwashed, they start to brag about being brainwashed, that it's a positive thing. So the distinction here is all about the context of the words is constantly the meanings are being manipulated. So the warning signs of a brainwash, and I don't mean this in a positive or an enriching, evolving kind of way. The warning signs of a brainwash victim. Number 1, obsessive, extreme obsessiveness regarding the group or cult leader, resulting in the exclusion of almost every practical consideration. Now, I will say honestly, even though I consider myself a very intelligent person, by the time I left this cult, that's the only music I was listening to. It's primarily what I was sharing, even I have to say, with people that were around me. Now, for my mind, I'm thinking I'm sharing something that's positive for the Black community, eating fruits and vegetables, and so on. That's the context I had. But that's not actually what was going on. Literally, if I have to look at it, I didn't know what this man's agenda was, and I did not know enough about his character. So technically anybody can be used to lure other people. Women are usually used to lure, women are a big lure to lure other men into the cult who are looking for a mate, or somebody who they can control, or a mate that's been prepared especially for them, in this case vegan virgins and women who are not going to give them any problem, like the women on the outside. Yeah, basically it's more to that, but I want to keep this really, really simple. So 1, obsessiveness regarding extreme obsessiveness regarding the group or the cult leader, resulting in the exclusion from almost every practical consideration. Number 2, dependency upon the group leader for problem solving, solutions, definitions without meaningful reflective thought, a seeming inability to think independently or analyze situations without group leader of involvement. Again, this is 110% accurate. It could be a black cult, it could be a white cult, whatever. If you look at the patterns, I invite people to look at the patterns, because many people are so habitually used to, in this age of social media, going to pages and venting out their feelings or from their perspective. And what happens, you didn't learn anything new, you didn't learn anything beneficial. Also, we're not contributing to a constructive conversation or to any kinds of solutions, right? So there's a dependency. I can also tell you from firsthand experience that the cult leader encourages you to be dependent 100% on them for your food, for thought, for companionship. You're meant to be dependent on them. Also, people who are more mature coming into a cult, who have also worked and earned their own money. You said you're made, when you come in, you give, they want you to give, money and things. Of course, any place you go into, you contribute, but it's the context. You give your money and then you have nothing, but then you're made to believe that you can't survive when you are working mature adult before, if that makes sense. So if people were to look, Joseph Robinson, you can't see his stuff online, but definitely some of these other cults, if you just look at the patterns of the money that's given, but then the same money said that I'm taking care of you, but the money came from all the people that came into the cult. So the point is, you are encouraged to and trained and groomed to be 100% dependent on the cult, in particular the cult leader, for any kinds of decisions. Yeah, basically. And then, I don't want to lose. So the dependency number 3 agrees with the group. So anything the group leader does can be justified no matter how harsh or harmful. 110% on. Number 4, loss of spontaneity. A dramatic loss of spontaneity in the sense of humor. Again, 110% off. So things that you may have wanted to do, like dance, sing, everything, you become very restricted and stifled in a cult environment, or when you're dependent on a cult leader or somebody manipulating you. And number 5, isolation. Increasing isolation from family and old friends unless they demonstrate an interest in the group leader. So you're encouraged to be totally isolated from your family and friends. In this case, everybody's a death consumption culture. So again, with the many people that want to call people names, oh, you're dumb, you're stupid, that could never happen to me. This information is put out there so people can step back and see some of the patterns. Most people, and I would definitely say in the Black community, one of the ways we can that we are had often is because of our preferences. We have preferences. So there's all different flavors of the rainbow of cults, and even within our community. So some people prefer a Baptist cult. Some people prefer cult leaders with locks. Some people prefer the language or the way they spoke to them, or the way that they related to the way that they grew up. So the preferences that we have is what leaves us vulnerable. So I invite people to also look. A lot of these patterns play out in people's personal relationships. But as this cult leader, Joseph Robinson, said, and as many of them do, the cult leaders are actually telling you a lot of the truth. But as this one said, listen, he said, he spoke about Hitler sometimes, and in Hitler's book Mein Kampf, a book that it might have been his autobiography. But basically, Hitler was saying the best place to hide something is right in front of the person, right? So a lot of us quote these meanings and these sayings, but may not look into the deeper meaning. The best place to hide something is right in front of somebody's face. So for example, if a con artist or a cult leader is telling you about other people, other look out for those other cons, look out for white supremacy, look out for this or that, most likely you're gonna be like, wow, thanks so much for putting me on. You're not going to be thinking that this person, what would be their motivation in telling you about the con? They couldn't this person couldn't possibly be wanting to con me. A minister, they're a person of God. They wouldn't possibly do anything so horrible as to molest or exploit young men or young boys. So the best place to hide something is literally behind words and in front of somebody's face. Quite often we respond to a clergy's neck piece, or if we see business suits, or if you see people all cleaned up, or we respond to social profiles. A lot of times we think in pictures and in memories. It is not hard to program people. So I invite people to just press pause just for a moment for your own benefit on your preferences and look at the patterns, because you don't necessarily walk away more educated when you just come and you vent on a channel. Grown folks can do whatever they want, but you don't necessarily leave with more insight if your only motivation is to just pass a condemnation. Do use your judgment in the context of common sense, but just to come and just blurt out and call people names, it doesn't necessarily help to educate you. You don't necessarily walk away with anything new. Okay, and so lastly, to avoid mind control, it is recommended you avoid being naive. Now, again, as a very intelligent person, as a very feeling person, as a person that likes to do the right thing, that likes to be supportive, that's just something inherently in me. I have had to learn the hard way not to be naive. Doesn't mean you're stupid, but everybody is necessarily thinking the way that you are, and it's easy for women and mothers and people that are very caring, people that have a conscience, to be exploited. The cult leader, the con artist, needs people who actually have a conscience, because they're going to have a vested interest in always doing the right thing. Right? So they're going to have a vested interest. They're going to rat on the other people, which is why inside of a cult, if there are family members, which they're usually isolated, so that's rare, but couples are pitted against each other. The cult members are pitted against each other because everybody is so wanting to live by the principles and do everything 100% right. There's something inside where they want to do the right thing, but those desires quite often are manipulated and used against you. Very natural desires for relationships, for motherhood, for community. Those very desires, your desire to see a healthy Black male and a father, your simple desires and your preferences are quite often used to manipulate you. This is not just cults per se. This is played out every day in politics and business. So when people are quick to think that they're not being manipulated, it happens every day. And what would people do if they let go of their religions? It is very easy for us to condemn older folks for, it's idiotic at this point to still be following Christianity. But for many people, I'm going to make a distinction. You're welcome to contribute constructively to the conversation. Is for many people, when you identify with someone who is for example, your Jesus, your Savior, who you look up to, they represent something that you're holding on to, of anything that's good, of any kind of possibility. So to dismantle that is messing with people's concept of reality. What would people do without their idea, right, of their Savior? There's a lot that you would have to reckon with. Your own mortality. You'd have to reckon with nobody's coming to help you or to save you. You might have to reckon with that you are physically alone. So for people to, for example, and this is just something for people to just examine. For many Black women that may not have had that father, may have been abused, there is a need. It's not so much logical, it's more emotional. Quite often we're making decisions from emotions and from past traumas. The mind is trying to make sense and to even indirectly heal itself from trauma. So it is not based on logic. Most of these decisions are not being based on logic. So in even looking at the amount of women online who are coming to the defense of folks with criminal records, or just are demonstrating poor character, poor judgment, and a track record of being dishonorable, it almost doesn't make sense. that women would come to the defense. Like there's something that the mind is trying to prove or trying to relate to. It's very dangerous. But all that to say, it's not logical. It's people trying to, it's many women trying to reckon with, it's almost like your reality is collapsing at the idea of you being alone, or you being vulnerable to physical attack, or you not having a man, or you not being loved. It plays to some of the basic human fears. Some being the loss of love, never finding love, fear of being alone, fear of illness, fear of health, fear of poverty. All of this plays into human psychology, right? So again, I invite you to look past your preferences, because the preferences land us in a lot of trouble, or more, it blinds us. We become blind to what is actually happening, not in our interpretation or our feeling. We become blinded by our preferences. And so we think there's no way that this person would do such a thing, you know? So a lot of times we're in a fantasy. So something also that I would invite people to just think of and perhaps do a scan on their own is, have you in your own personal life gone from one religion to another, or traded off religion for something new age? So, oh, I'm not in any religion. Now I go to the meditation center, or now I go to the Buddhist center, or this, it doesn't have any labels. You know, now I go here. So this is different and may not distinguish the patterns. So have you ever swapped one? It's not to make people wrong, it's to invite us to use and to refine our critical thinking. This applies to the masses of people, but definitely us as a collective, as a Black community, because we're easy to manipulate, because we're easily turned out by music, you know, because music, you know, it has people, laugh and joke about baby making music, or music can take you to a place where you feel depressed, you can feel happy. It's not hard to manipulate people without food, music, the lyrics, your emotions. So I invite people to just take a moment and do an objective scan, and just put your preferences to the side for a moment, so that perhaps you can just try on um, learning something different, or seeing from another perspective that can only benefit you. If it doesn't, you're welcome to leave it, you know, in the trash. Also, something for us to consider, not just a religion. You know, we live in a time of celebrity worship. Many people don't consider this cults, but if we just look at the amount of reality shows, they are an escape, a mental escape from people's the monotony, or the frustration with people with their daily lives, the jobs that they have to go to where they're not being creative, or the amount of hours they have to work, or the stresses um, in their lives. So the reality shows, and the worshiping Prince and worshiping Michael Jackson, the amount of, you know, people passing out at concerts. It's a cult of celebrity, literal worship. You know, what people would want to change their hair. This is why, you know, based on celebrities, that's why they get free clothes, you know, all the time. So it's very easy for people to come and vent on uh, a social media page with no face, no avatar from behind the screen, and, you know, vent off, but not realize that the same thing that is going on in these cults is playing out in people's everyday life. So it's really something with all this, you know, Illuminati, conspiracy theories. Again, understand there are specific formulas. Cult leaders understand, and manipulators. The best place to hide something is in front of your face, within language, or somebody, you feel like somebody's doing you a favor and looking out for you. Then you don't suspect the person, because we have personal preferences. You don't expect certain things to come from your father, from your mother, from the religious leader, from the teacher. So, you know, the average person, we all play a responsibility in what is happening. So it's very, very easy. It is so tempting. It is so addictive to just look at the people on the screen and think that they're stupid. You know, oh my gosh, like almost with the air of disgust. This actually is what also happens inside cults, that you're made to feel that you're better than the rest of them, you know, or you've got private audience with the high priest or with the leader, you know, you're going to be their favorite mate, you know. So these things, they appease your ego. inside of a cult, again, I can tell you from firsthand experience what I've observed is that for people that want to leave or want to go home, or they start to see things, you're usually appeased. Usually your ego is stroked. They'll appeal to your need for attention, especially women. With men, to your need to feel like a man or like you have say, but it's given to you and then it's pulled back and it's taken away. So there are specific techniques that I have to say a lot, pretty much everything that I had suspected and things that I put in my Rolodex that I was watching the whole time, things that didn't add up, that all of my intuition was confirmed. Again, I can make the distinction between fruits and vegetables, living foods, community, nothing wrong with that. But my preferences could and did blind me to a certain extent to character. But the things that I saw in character, I didn't ignore them. Fortunately, I just put them in my mental Rolodex because I don't like to accuse somebody falsely, you know. Where I could not ignore certain behaviors that I saw, no matter how much raw fruits and vegetables, no matter how much locks and red, gold, and green, and how much I wanted this person to be a father figure, I could not ignore the things that I saw and the distinct patterns. So I invite people, be very careful of allowing your preferences to blind you to what human beings are capable of. Often, most people also, particularly, especially once you get inside of the cult, do not cross-reference the cult leader. They don't cross-reference. Anybody can come tell you all these stories, and this one he's a master manipulator. When somebody's a master, we take for granted. We like to think that we're so smart. That's one of the ways that they get you. You think it couldn't happen to me. But a master manipulator, a con artist, is called as such for a reason. They're constantly listening and auditing for your insecurities, your vulnerabilities, and where you're going to trip up. And a big place that I have to say many Black people are being got is because the first thing that we do is we go online and blip, 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 accuse and just vent online. We don't even take the time to investigate. A lot of times we don't listen. We don't listen a lot of times as a people. So you can put stuff right here in front of our face. We don't pay attention because we are so easily conditioned to distraction. We're so busy partying and having a great time. We're not paying attention. So a lot of stuff is going on our watch. We're distracted, or we're tired, or our mental capabilities and motor skills are compromised by whatever vices we have or narcotics. So our thinking is not sharp. We're not paying attention. And many people that come online and leave their comments, we're so entertained that we're missing a lot of the point. It's only but so much people can come online and make videos of warnings or education. Hopefully young people will become educated. Hopefully our people will just start to take the time maybe to be quiet and ask ourselves some questions, because everybody thinks that it's beyond them when this is happening on various different levels all over. It's global, but definitely it's come up in our community. It's an opportunity. That's the most positive thing that I can say that can come from this, because the goal is not to sit, and feel better and feel, it's all over after I watch another episode of cult leader, blah, 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 in the city or in the jungle, that's it. It's like a reality TV show, and people, you become paralyzed. You become neutralized. Nothing comes of it. So the intention for the sharing is so that folks can use their critical thinking. We have things to do. There's food to grow, there's economics to grow, health, but we cannot grow with predators. You cannot grow and build with a scammer. But there are a lot of things that we're not paying attention to because we're blinded by our preferences. So last couple of notes is, we are defenders of our preferences. So one of the patterns that I see, male and female, because of what the cult leader represents for us, you're not going to talk about our Baba, our elder. You know what I'm saying? It's interesting. I'm watching this elder and people saying the elder sure told him. Again, the best place to hide something is in front of your face. I watch it. I can only come on here, but so much. But I can see many people are not connecting the dots. I invite you to, rather than have an allegiance to a person, have an allegiance to common sense, have an allegiance to standards and principles. So, should someone who meets your profile for your preferences show you some patterns, that you can make a distinction and separate your emotion and your affection from what is actually happening. So, this is rampant. Sometimes I observe it's like, people just get in line to take advantage of us, but we're participants because we are blinded by our preferences. Hopefully that makes sense. And we defend our preferences even when it's totally contradictory to what results are showing us. And we make lots of rationalizations and excuses for people that we have affection for and who we like the way they speak or their charisma. We make rationalizations and justifications for behavior that is off. What did I want to just put on? So I invite people to look and examine if you yourself defend your preferences, right? It could be your husband, your son, your mother. Do we defend our preferences rather than look at actually at what is happening, right? Do we defend our concept? Again, this is something that the cult leader would use. We're defending our concept of not just religion, but of the afterlife, which plays indirectly to one of the basic fears, human basic fears of death. So the story that makes us comfortable with the fact that we will all exit this physical presence, we will basically all die one day, and it's a human fear, that is something that is exploited. For example, I think it was yesterday or the day before, I'm out in the, about to go out in the garden, and some religious folks, some JWs come by. This is no diss to JWs. I respect other people's choices, their food choices, and their religious choices. But they come by and they're calling me, outside from the window. Hey, how you doing? How can I help you? And I'm like, well, we want to leave you with some scripture. No, thank you. I'm not interested. So they proceed to keep telling me about the scripture. So I said, excuse me. My little garden right here, this is my place of worship. It's not open to anybody's opinions. It's very, very simple. This is my church. They proceed to continue. Now, me, again, not wanting to be rude, well, and Timothy, this and this and that. I said, listen, respectfully, I am not interested in cults. I've seen the results of cults. If I turn down the volume, I'm only interested in behavior and how people treat each other. I said, in actuality, many slave ships that were blessed by the good ship, so and so, this religious book, and so on. So I'm actually not interested. The person still proceeded, because I was polite, to push their scripture. Even though I said, wow, you're right in terms of the garden. So going back and forth is not necessarily a good use of energy, particularly if you're speaking to a narcissist or a religious zealot, because they're pushing something, because there's a need, there is a drive to for this belief. It's representing something, and to let it go causes many people to go initially into a depression, because they need something to believe in, to escape from the realities of their life. And the reality of your life with its challenges is not necessarily a bad thing. There's all this fear around high rent, or having to deal with relationships, or the fact that so many people have STDs. These are realities of life that we have to deal with. We're intelligent people. We can really come up with solutions. We can really make other decisions to deal with all the things that life is presenting us with. So a couple of simple things, and I said it before, not to be underestimated. I think some of the things that are most helpful, two things, is responsibility and respect, because responsibility has actions attached to it. Anybody can come and tell you anything, and espouse these theories, and just tell you all this stuff. The actions and the consistent actions over time is what's going to be very revealing. Not just to cult leaders, but again, it's very revealing the amount of viciousness, of hatred, of insecurity, of panic that is being demonstrated by folks' comments and the commentary all over social media, if we take a step back and we look, it's telling us a lot about our state and condition. And so while we can look at folks inside of cults, this stuff is being shown to us so we can have a look at ourselves. And if we even, some people don't even have a concern for young people of the next generation. People that have a concern for the next generation are prime targets for cults. So it's like, what are you to do? You know, it's not like you can be paranoid and not go out there and live your life and live in a bubble and not interact with people. So, how can we keep this simple? Because you may not know all of people's details of their life, but if we play to our preferences, um, again, it will blind us. So it's a lot of there's a lot of notes I took here. I don't want to go on and on. It's something else I did say, and again, some of this stuff does not hit home and it doesn't connect because people may not have a frame of reference or not think that these principles apply to us. Cult leaders and manipulators are very, very, very well aware. And I said this a long time ago. This is based on experience. One of the main things that cult leaders would use against folks is their own vices and contradictions. So, for example, one of the attractions to these cult members, if you can look at some of the males, folks may have, and females, but may feel a lot of shame about things that they have done in their past. So, initially, the cult leader is auditing you to find out your insecurities or things you feel ashamed about, things that you feel ashamed about, or sad about, or regrets about, or things that occupy a lot of brain space and often cause many people to be inhibited and not risk or take on certain things in their life. A lot of things that we're holding in the back of our mind can even affect us when we're trying to study, to improve sharing personal information. So, am I saying don't be honest and truthful? No, I'm not saying that. But I can say I've learned the hard way that when you're sharing information and information that can be very triggering to the point where you will be blind or even it can reactivate trauma in terms of shame, sadness. These are things that manipulators understand human psychology, which will make people, again, have a reaction that goes beyond logic. They have a sense, some intuitively at a street level, some study it and go seek tutelage and seek to be tutored by professional scammers and professional cult leaders. I could tell you there's numerous men that seek counsel from Joseph Robinson in this cult. And many people are going to, will still go to a cult because we're just so curious. It's like women thinking, okay, this person doesn't take care of their children, but it's going to be different with me, or I'm too smart to be had. So let me go on in there. I'm going to turn the whole thing around. There are people that go undercover in cults that sometimes they have to be deprogrammed because they start to buy into the rhetoric, or they hadn't banked on forming intimate relationships like brother and sister with the people inside the cults, these human beings. So a lot of times we're underestimating our emotions. We're underestimating psychological trauma. We're underestimating these things. And many of us turn to religions and to cults because many of us have been raised with the tools to deal with a lot of our own trauma. As a culture, many of us don't acknowledge or look into mental trauma, mental illness. Understandably, many Black folks don't want to volunteer themselves for drug testing, or everything is medicated away. So it's not like we're at this point stable and healthy enough where you have people that you can go to, elders you can trust for guidance, so that you're not medicating things that would ideally be dealt with in a family setting or a community setting. So many people look to the cult leader because they think it's easier, or we go very trusting. But I can say our safety is our responsibility as males and females. But as women, our safety and the safety of our children is our responsibility. We want people sometimes to do the thinking for us, or to just make us comfortable with the fact that many of us are single. It's not a death sentence, but many of us are depressed behind this. So we're just looking for anybody to take that mental, emotional pain away. So we just willingly just give our brains over, and we give our children over, and we just open the door because we're so desperate and needy. So some of our basic simple natural desires. It's natural to want to experience intimate relationships and have children, but we're also, in a situation, but it's not a death sentence. So do understand our basic insecurities and fears, whether you call it a cult or not, are being exploited. And the best place to hide something is in front of somebody's face. Some of this I didn't understand. Some of it I knew, but some of it, the details of it, I didn't understand until, well, let me not say I didn't understand. I have much more of a refined, solid frame of reference from life experience, which is something different than reading it in the books. You can read something in the book and it sounds good. You could hear something that sounds good, but life experience, and being able to see patterns play out, is a whole nother thing. I'm smart enough to know that it can happen, believe it or not, to anybody, even folks that feel that they are invincible. So I'm inviting folks, particularly Black folks, to not be blinded by our preferences because we like somebody's personality. The amount of women that are coming to the defense of these cult leaders, and manipulators and pimps and predators is absolutely astounding, but it is what it is. And it's showing us, again, this is showing us something. What are we going to do with this information? Are we simply going to continue to be entertained? Some people might know what to do and may feel panicked, don't know what to do, so we do nothing, but it's definitely, an opportunity for us to be responsible and to be accountable. We don't have time. I don't have time to sit on the computer all day. Most people may think they don't have the time to do the research, but I'd advise you to do some research, before you head off to any of these places. And many of us, don't feel confident in solving our own challenges, aka problems in life, but you can. And a lot of us would save a lot of heartache if we could be mature and responsible enough to make responsible decisions and not put ourselves in harm's way. So which goes to a whole nother thing. And we could say, yes, we didn't have support, we didn't have tools. Whether you're ignorant or not, the consequences you're still going to get. If you go into any of these cults, or even into relationships, and you don't take the time to vet people financially, their criminal record, their character, diseases, or if you make uninformed decisions, whether you're a nice person or not, you're still going to get the consequences. It has nothing to do with you being nice or people liking you, or I like this one better. Oh, I like her, I like them. This information, any of the lessons, if you can gather any kind of information or lessons, any kind of insight that you didn't have to go through personally, is there anything that you can find that you can apply in your own life, at least to see some patterns? Is there anything that you can see in your own life that you can point out to young people? Is there anything, if that was you, that you would want somebody to say to you? Can it save you any kind of heartache? So I invite folks to look at, what is the point of going onto YouTube. I think YouTube, you can either zone out and get drunk on the entertainment, or it allows you access to some things we could never see before. You can see people growing fruits and vegetables all over the world in bags and boxes and dirt and all kinds of trying situations. You can get all kinds of education. You still need life experience. But, are we using this? Are we using our time constructively? What are you hoping to gain by looking at these videos? What is it that you would like to achieve by looking at these videos? Is it valuable? Is it something that you can translate and put into some kind of action? So I'm not here asking for permission, for validation. I'm not here to beg my folks to change. All that stuff doesn't work. We are at a point where we can see that certain things haven't worked and haven't produced results, where we continue to do the same. It's very, very easy to do. It's easy to look at other people and think that that couldn't happen to us. The stuff is happening on different levels every day. So hopefully this is helpful for folks. I can't see any of the comments on my screen, and perhaps that's a good thing. I have no desire to exploit my family. We've been through enough. We've gotten some hard, precious life lessons, but they've been hard life lessons. So you can learn, yes, you can learn some things from the trauma and the life experiences of others. It's just like now with unsafe sex, you don't have to go through what everybody else went through. There's some things you're going to have to learn on your own, but there's certain things we just don't have to do at this point, and in terms of putting ourselves in harm's way. So, the information is there. What are you going to do with it? What's the purpose for sitting here looking and commenting? There's only so many hours in a day. I'm sure there's a lot that we could be planting, growing, studying, things we can be doing to improve ourselves. Right now, there's a lot of information for us to make males and females to make much better educated decisions. Now that you can see patterns before you live with somebody, you can make more educated decisions about people that are insecure, not being upfront with you about their medical status, their criminal status. We now can see a lot of things we couldn't see before. Are we using this computer screen to learn something so that we can do better? Because there's a lot of doing better to be done. So it's just my simple observation. I have no desire to exploit my family, and now I'm seeing more. Now I wonder why people that disappeared didn't speak up. Now I'm seeing more of why people don't speak up, and it's heightened because of the viciousness. When you're telling somebody something, no different than a woman or a young male, um, speaking up about being abused or molested, and from other men, they're made to feel like they're not a man, or they're ridiculed and shamed, or women are attacked maybe by their mothers or other family members in their community. I'm seeing more and more why people um, don't speak up. So it's a risk for me to put myself out there. I have other things to do in my life. This is not what I want to, excuse me, what I want to be known for. Hopefully this is it can be something that can stimulate folks to think and be a solution and be responsible for all of us, not just 20-year-olds and 19-year-olds. There are 50-year-olds, 60-year-olds that would be very irresponsible sexually and with our genitals and open ourselves up to all kinds of stuff and people. We're opening ourselves up. We're not choosing as a collective to be mature and to just learn from life lessons. We're not. This is us as a collective. This is just not these cult leaders. This stuff is out here so you can learn. So you can learn, do something with the information rather than, oh girl, they was talking over each other. Oh my gosh, these dummies. Oh, they so stupid. They get, it's like it's so much deeper than that. I don't want to believe that we are that shallow. But I also understand it's not hard to condition people like animals. And when I say that, the type of animals that are not thinking, that don't have conscious will. So hopefully, this is valuable, provides some insight. It's only but so much I can come on here. I don't have any illusions about being a savior. I have zero interest in being a martyr for people. Several people said, "Oh, I should expose this person." If everybody was exposed, it's still some work for us to do. What are we going to do? Expose folks, and then what? Then what do we do after all the exposing? These folks, the cult leaders know that many of us are not going to give up basic stuff. We're not going to give up our vices. There's some key simple stuff that they use against it. They'll use something like your hair having a perm, or you're eating chicken, or more so not just eating chicken, doing things and having vices that are unhealthy for you, and that we don't address these things. These are some simple things. They use your religion, your food, and your hair. Some of your vices and your contradictions, they will use against you, the things that you won't deal with on your own. So best I can do is share these things. People are going to continue to say, follow the elder. You don't know this person. They could have been 100 years old. You don't know them. Everybody deserves respect. You respect your elders, but that doesn't mean they're not capable of doing some foulness. We have to, not I'm saying we have to, I can't tell grown folks what to do, but it is obviously time for us to grow up and mature and get some lessons if we would like to see some different results. Okay. And there are some things I did notice that many people are not even interested. Not saying everybody has to garden. Folks would rather click on to seeing the drama in people's lives rather than learning how to grow some food or exercise, things that don't really cost that much money. You know what I'm saying? It's like, again, it's a lot of education out there to be had. It's a lot that we can be doing with our time that's constructive to improve um, ourselves rather than bashing each other. Yeah, so another reason why I invite people to everybody keep their genitals to themselves, and so we can get our minds right. So hopefully this is helpful. Create a great day.